Well, good morning. Welcome to Big Cube Sunday morning. It is the Sunday brunch day. That's the day that I recognize that the best thing I can do is get off camera as quick as possible and turn it over to Karen and Brenda and Phil. Phil didn't show up today. She's doing next month's. Uh,
Oh. Hmm.
and so, but what we got here is Sunday brunch, and we are thrilled to have uh, Nina Kiriki Hoffman. And now, did I pronounce it right?
Pretty close, yeah.
Okay, good. And Brenda Clough, as well as Karen G. Anderson, or better known for her writing name as KG Anderson, one of the greatest uh, late blooming writers I've ever met. And she just rocks. So that said, I'm gonna let it go, and so Karen or Brenda or Nina, somebody better start talking because you know what? I uh, I
You're
have
out of
just
here.
thrown you in the pool.
Nice suspenders, Bob.
I, I, I will jump in. Um, it is our real pleasure tonight to invite a very well known name in science fiction, Nini Kariki Hoffman, to join us. And I invited her because Nina's one of the best writing teachers I have ever encountered. And I'm
Yay!
hoping that she will
So true.
talk a little bit, not just about her own experience writing and teaching writing, um, but give a little bit of advice to people who are thinking about taking a writing course or jumping back in. I've been publishing for almost 13 years now, and I still find it incredibly valuable to take seminars and writing workshops like the ones that Nina teaches. So Nina, start off. I went to look up how long you've been writing and what kind of things you've written, and you've done just about everything. So tell us a little bit about why you've had such a highly varied career in speculative fiction.
Well, I had a lot more energy when I started out 40 years ago. I was thinking about that. And some of the books I've written, I did some R.L. Stein stuff, and I did a Star Trek Voyager. And I was living in the same neighborhood as Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush. We were all within a block of each other, and we do potlucks. And they started a publishing house called Pulp House, and they were real inspiring about working hard. And so, my agent lined me up with some work for hire stuff initially. I mean, I published some novels first, and then I got to branch out a little bit and actually working with Parachute that published The Ghosts of Fear Street. It was like middle grade books. Wait a second. Yeah, middle grade spooky books. Like they were like Goosebumps, but not quite as cool. But that was really fun. I worked with some great editors there and made creepy books. I wrote one Sweet Valley High junior um, junior high school book that was really fun too. So I got to try that stuff. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but that was
It
it was fun. Yeah.
The
what
path that a writer takes is always interesting, because it's every single one of us is different.
what are you working on currently? I know you're still writing a lot of short fiction. Are you doing any novels currently?
I have a dream of doing a novel, but I haven't really got anything that coalesced. So I'm doing a lot of teaching at this point, and I'm doing short stuff. I maybe with NaNoWriMo I'll get something kicked off. I usually try that every year, and I have some like 30,000 word chunks of things that aren't books yet. Really, it's been so chaotic the last 4 years. I moved 2 weeks before COVID shut down. Um, into this wonderful retirement manufactured home park where I have a lot of fun neighbors and I'm really happy. But ever since then, I've just been doing all these crazy things and I haven't really carved out time to
I'm
work on
gonna
a book.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna take you back to the beginning because I'm gonna ask you to talk a lot about teaching. Who were your really formative teachers when you started out?
Well, I went to Clarion in 1982, and that's when I really feel like everything started for me because
Where
every
was
teacher who was
where was
there
it then?
was in Michigan. Yes, East Lansing.
And
Um,
who was teaching?
My teachers were Algis Budrus, Marta Randall, Samuel Delaney, um, Orson Scott Card, Kate Wilhelm, and Damon Knight.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they all told me that I was doing a good job. So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life is write. And so um, that was really inspirational. Actually, Dean and I drove over there together. We were living in the same building at that point. He was in the basement and I was in the upstairs apartment. And in between us was a bookstore that he
Oh my
ran.
God, what a life.
It was great. And we were right downtown, but I got to be upstairs and watch everything from above. And yeah, and then he would write stories down at the desk of the bookstore, and then I would go through and edit them. And we were in Selectrix at that point, so yeah. And we both got accepted that year, and we drove across. We stopped at the Custer Battleground because he was really inspired by that whole history. And then we went to Clarion together, and we drove home together. And we had a workshop in Moscow, Idaho, where we tried to teach everything that we had learned while we were at Clarion. We tried to transmit that to our friends in the workshop.
So you were teaching almost as soon as you really started writing.
Not formally, but we're trying to. Well, before that we were going to convention workshops like at Norwestcon and Oricon, and we'd try and find out stuff from them and bring it home to share. And the other people like Lorianne White, John Gustafson, were also, going out and learning. And so we were trying to share knowledge. And then Dean and I would challenge each other to write a story a week, or we owed each other a Coke at dinner or something like that. And if you sold a story, everybody bought you a steak dinner, which I think we decided that we had to turn that around because I sold a story and they bought me a steak dinner. But it's like, if I got the money, I should pay for their dinners. But I don't know. I think that one sort of fell apart after a while, but it was really inspiring.
It sounds like being in a writing community was absolutely essential. Was this in Portland?
No, this was in Moscow, Idaho.
Wow.
That is not the heartbeat of the universe, when it
Hey, we put on our own con and everything. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's just that I just don't think of it that way.
No.
Do they still do it? How active is it now?
We had to drive 90 miles to fly anywhere. We had to drive to Spokane to actually fly anywhere. So yeah, it was in the middle of far away.
Was this the foundation of MissCon?
No, not at all. No, Missoula's quite farther from that. Yeah.
It's
all a big area of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, I found out that Missoula's not that far from Moscow, but anyway, I moved to Oregon in 1984. So, and then we started a workshop. Dean moved over there. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth, but Dean ended up in the same town, Lincoln City, on the coast here. And we had a workshop over there, although that one was already started by M.K. Wren, who lived in Rhodes End, which is just north of Lincoln City. I never workshopped with her, but we had a wonderful workshop there where one of the guys was a retired logger who was writing his memoir, and one of them was married to a forest ranger, and she was writing about that, and then somebody was writing religious fiction. So we met at the community center over there. That was really fun, and we got to see a lot of varied stuff. I think one of the guys was a retired police officer from Los Angeles. So
I want to jump in and say that my area of expertise is actually mystery fiction. I was a mystery reviewer for many years, and M.K. Wren's writing, which you'll be able to find in the paperback section of used bookstores in the Pacific Northwest, is superb.
Oh,
You
yeah.
cannot go wrong. Talk about a really fine writer. And I love it that you're bringing that up because I love Pacific Northwest mysteries.
Yeah, and
give us a sample title, Karen. Give us a sample title so we can go and look.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah,
all my M.K. Wrens are down in my basement mystery section.
Okay.
She wrote science fiction, but she also wrote a series of mysteries that were set in Lincoln City, actually. So that was kind of cool. Conan, her detective was named Conan, but it's been a long time since I read them. But that was cool.
Her science fiction included A Gift Upon the Shore, is the really well-known one.
Yeah.
But the one that I remember were the Conan Flagg mysteries.
That's it, Conan Flagg.
Which begin with Curiosity Didn't Kill the Cat, and include one that I'll bet Nina remembers called Wake Up, Darlin' Corey, which
Mm,
cites the folk music tune.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay, that's
so
good because then we can go and look it up.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's everyone's takeaway for the day. They can
Mhm.
read M.K. Wren.
Yeah. I wonder if any of that stuff is on Kindle because then I could read it again.
I think just the science fiction. The science
Okay.
fiction one seems to have endured. But yeah. But anyway, Nina, back to the stuff that you were doing. Talk to us. Whenever I talk with well-known science fiction writers, people always say, and then I did this Star Trek book. What I didn't explain to me why
Oh,
all these folks like you are roped in.
no, it was like we were lucky to get it. I mean, that was great work at that point.
Mhm.
And that, they paid well. John Ordover was good to work with. And we were excited about the shows. So this was the 90s, and like they had a really big program where they were trying to cover all the different treks. And in fact, the one I did write was with Dean and Chris, was oh shoot, the Captain Janeway. And
Oh,
Oh
okay.
wow.
yeah, and we wrote that before the show started. So we had the Bible, we had the series Bible and stuff like that. And we're making up stuff about characters that we hadn't even seen yet. And we got like a script or something. But yeah, that was pretty exciting.
So you didn't know who the actors were at that point. You didn't have a visual.
Because yeah, I think we had a pretty good but the series Bible had the characters listed and stuff. Gosh, I wish I could find that because that would be good.
Yeah.
It's Star
But
Trek
it's always so
Voyager, yeah.
fun to do that.
Yeah, it was great. So we didn't know who Chakotay was, I don't think, but yeah, Dean came up with the plot, and then I was writing all the descriptions, and then Chris went through and she put the dialogue in. And I think by the time we finished the book, probably the first couple of shows had aired, but like we knew the doctor was Doc Zimmerman, and then he just turned out to be the doctor. He was never Doc Zimmerman, but in the Bible, he actually had a name. So
Oh,
it
interesting.
was pretty cool. It was really exciting. And like all our friends were doing it, Jerry Oltian, Dave Bischoff, all these guys we know from workshops here in Eugene. Everybody was doing that. So it was really fun. It wasn't like we were roped into it at all. It's like we're looking for the work.
And it's really lucrative to do that kind of thing because if you look at like TV or movie production, the writers are absolutely like the bottom, you're just above
Uh-huh.
the people who scrub the floors. But the money is so great that just shows you how much they're actually paying like the guys who do the cameras, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, we're not making movie money on the books. But
No,
we're
but you're
making a
making a
decent.
heck of a lot more money than writers usually make.
I don't know about that either, but it was decent money. That's all.
Exactly. And so,
Yeah.
you don't say no to that. It's too good.
No, we went after it. It's not like
Yes.
anybody was asking us, or maybe maybe the people who did it on a regular basis. Yeah, they were being asked. Yeah.
Mhm. And there are people who have made entire careers based on their media tie-in writing. Anne Crispin immediately comes to mind. But,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you can do a great
Dean's
deal
done a
with that.
ton. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dean has done a lot of different things. He's done movies and TV shows. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Nina, have you done any other shared world writing?
I don't think I have actually. I
I
mean,
was just curious
aside
because
from work for hire, yeah, no.
when I read your stories, your worlds are so fully realized and vivid. I'm
Oh,
just plunged
thanks.
right into them, and I was curious about how when you do that, how you get into somebody else's world. But it sounds like mostly you're doing your own.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So talk about what are your favorite kind of worlds to build?
Well,
Into
I like the Twilight Zone thing where it's like one step away from our reality,
Mhm.
especially if like people have magic. I like that. But then I end up writing a lot of little short things that are kind of mean, and then I'm like, oh, who am I? I don't know. But if I have characters that I love, then I don't want to subject them to horrible things, which is a problem. Like I was talking to Brenda before we started, and she's like, she's so thrilled because she's writing a novel and she's just about to kill everybody and have a Hamlet end scene. And I
Yeah,
think,
they're all gonna
no,
die.
no, I don't want to do that. No.
Well, have you ever considered collecting all of your stuff? All the mean things in one book, all the happier things in another book?
I haven't thought about it that way, but I have done some collections. Like I was selling stories to Daily Science Fiction. I'm so sad that they are not publishing
Yeah.
anymore because what a wonderful, I mean, they published a whole lot of interesting things that were very different and they
Mhm.
buy stories from me a whole lot. So I sold them about 28 things and so then I had a lot of flash pieces that could uh, vary a lot. So I put together two little collections of like, here's a book that has 18 stories in it, and
It's only
they're
15 pages long.
no, it's 80 pages long, but it's on Amazon. Yeah, so yeah, there's and I also so it's got short sharp snacks volumes 1 and 2, and then I have one called Stories My Pseudonym Wrote because I was selling a lot to FNSF when Chris was editing it, and then she said, "Well, I shouldn't have too many in inventory from you. Why don't you have a pseudonym?" So I did, and then I sold her some more stories. So, and also the pseudonym went off and wrote stuff that was slightly different in tone too. So that was
What is the pseudonym's tone?
it's a little. I think they're a little darker than mine, although I wrote a lot of really dark stuff. It's a little bit more weird. I don't know. They might go someplace that I wouldn't necessarily go.
So, Nina, about how many stories have you? So, Chris Catherine Rush and Dean Wesley Smith do this very famous series called Pulp House,
Mhm.
Yes.
which are these incredibly riveting and engaging stories, a little bit old style. And the entire Pulp House collection is in my living room right
Oh
now
wow.
because my partner collects them. They're in a
Wow.
glassed in bookcase, first editions.
Wow.
Um, but about how many stories have you written for them? Lots?
Well, think I had a story in every issue of the hardback magazine, which ran for a couple, 3 years, I think.
And
I'm
one
looking
of
over
those
at the
stories is really famous.
like Savage Breasts.
I was astonished when that's been reprinted many, many, many times.
Uh,
Do you remember how? I mean, I think all women writers I know wish they'd written that story.
I
Do you
wrote that
remember
at Clarion in 1982, actually.
what inspired you? What was the aha moment that led to?
It was thinking about the poem. Music has charms to soothe the savage breast. Um, and I don't know, I was an English major at that point. I was going to the University of Idaho. And so I had some poetry classes. And then I was walking down the hall talking to my friend Rena, and I was saying, "What about that?" And then I thought, "What about, I don't know, savage breasts?" Okay. And then I wrote that story. I think that might have been the Chip Delaney week. I don't know.
Oh dear.
I don't know anymore. It's a long time ago. But
It's been reprinted. If people are looking for it, it's in the Best of Pulp House, and it's also in an anthology called Savage Breasts and Other Misbehaving Body Parts.
yeah, that's one that I put together. Yeah, yeah. So that's a collection. Yeah. And
So
it got in a another anthology that Alan Dean Foster put together, like Smart Elves and Foolish, something like that. It's been a while, but yeah. So it did have some afterlife. Yeah.
cool. So I want to ask. No, so I have always seen your name in the magazines and in daily science fiction,
Mhm.
but the way I actually met you was by signing up to take your workshop.
Oh, so
So
glad you were there.
to us a little bit about how you come to be teaching at a program in Connecticut.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was like this was one of the weird gifts of COVID was that my friend Tessa, who was involved, she lives on the East Coast, and she was involved with the Fairfield County Writers Studio.
Mhm.
God, I don't want to get these things wrong, but
That's
uh,
it.
yes, and Carol Danhauser is the person who runs that, and she's wonderful. So anyway, Tessa suggested me as a teacher to Carol, And then Carol reached out to me and asked if I wanted to teach. And I had been teaching for 10 or 15 years through the local community college, but it shut down for COVID. And then when I tried my LCC email, it didn't work anymore. So I guess they fired me and didn't tell me. But I think they changed the whole adult education program. In any case, so Carol asked me to teach. And so I had a 7-week curriculum already, pretty much, from my community college teaching class. And then I adapted it to Zoom. And it's just been a wonderful experience. The way the way Fairfield County works is like the maximum number of students you can have per class is 6, and the minimum is 3. And then there have been wonderful people that are now my lifelong friends, and some people take the class over and over again. And it's like 7 weeks where there's a class on Wednesdays where I try and cover the basics, and there's a class on Sunday where we just do whatever we want to, and I try and come up with new stuff all the time for them to do. And people turn in 500 words a week, and we'll discuss those as part of the class. And then we also do a lot of in-class writing exercises and explorations. So that's been wonderful for me. I just love it.
You use a technique in getting people started writing that's based on gaming.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that I don't game, and I had no idea what you were talking about when you started doing that. And I just thought this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. But people, it totally works. I
Yeah.
totally so. But what I thought was really, really interesting is you can also. It took me a while to realize that you were telling me to do certain things, but that I could also change it. That I had
Yeah.
power over what
Yeah.
I would. Talk a little bit about what this technique is and how you came to use it in writing.
So when I lived in Moscow, Idaho, I moved there in 1977, and I joined a D&D group. I mean, we would go to somebody's basement. We'd spend the whole night there drinking Vulcan tea and playing a campaign that was laid out in graph paper on a tabletop. And this is like 1978, 79. And I was really excited because in D&D you roll up for 6 characteristics for your character. It's their constitution, wisdom, dexterity, strength, intelligence, and one more. I can only remember 5 things at a time. Yeah, and so you're creating a character by finding out if they're really smart or really stupid, or if they're really strong. So all these things go together, and then you come up with some person. And we were getting these little miniatures and painting them carefully with tiny brushes, and then we'd run them through the dungeons, and I get all attached to my characters. And that's why I stopped playing, because one of my characters was killed and there was no way to resurrect her. And it was like, oh, that's the character I love the most. I can't play this anymore. So after 2 years of playing, I stopped, and it's come a long way since then. But I was excited about that potential for not thinking too hard, but actually taking elements and forming them into people. And so I started doing roll-ups, which is a little bit different than that, but I've continued to develop them. It's where you roll up like maybe a profession, or maybe they're some kind of a creature. So do you get a zombie? Do you get a mermaid? Do you get a selkie? Do you get, there's 20 choices because I use D20s. Wait a second, I got a giant one around here someplace, but that Jody Lynn and I gave me.
That's so funny because my dice came from Sean and McGuire.
Ah,
Oh, whoa, look at that.
yeah. So Jody gave this to me at Writers of the Future this year. I don't know where. Before that, I had a big one that somebody else gave me, but I have a whole lot of little ones too. And I actually have a collected book called Cook Up a Story, or Story Cookbook. That has, so there's ones for characters, there's ones for plots, there's roll-ups for roll up a space tour, or I have a whole bunch of different ones. I haven't done the work on the romance yet, which I need to do, but I have science fiction, fantasy, and horror rites of passage. It's like your character is going to go through rites of passage. There's one of 20 on the page, and what is it going to be? And then if you write about that, what I figure is, if I have characters in a novel and I want to know who they were before they got to the book, they're going to have some experiences. So I might write a story about them going through a rite of passage, and then maybe you can sell that too. I don't know, but yeah. So I do a lot of prompt writing, which I think is you just the theory is any three things you're going to start building connections between them, and they use this technique at the Writers of the Future workshop, where it used to be you go out and wander around Hollywood and have a conversation with somebody. Don't tell them you're doing it for a story. You're just going to have a conversation. Could be somebody in line at the grocery store, or somebody you run into down there on Hollywood Boulevard. So you get a conversation.
Mhm.
You used to go to the library and research for 1 hour, just any random subject. And then they'd also hand you an object at the workshop. And you just those three things, you start cooking something up. Like, what if you got a little back scratcher claw? How would you develop that into something else? Like maybe that's a weapon or something like that. I did this with Jeffrey Landis, because Algis Budrys is the one who came up with these workshops based on some of L. Ron Hubbard's writing, but also he was really wonderful about this. And he went off and did a couple of these workshops in Moscow because he was like one of our guests of honor at the MosCon, and he really liked us. And Jeff Landis, he gave him a Pepsi can, and Jeff, like, he tore it to bits and had it all splayed out, and then it turned out it was like an abandoned space station orbiting the Earth. And he got a story out of it and sold it to Analog. It was just fantastic. So I've seen this operate, and I mean, it's really cool that you have three things as prompts and you can go anywhere. So that was sort of another of the origin stories for this, was thinking about that. So I do a lot of prompt writing like that. Carol Danhauser at Fairfield also does a prompt writing, which will give you a first sentence you write for 15 minutes. And then she says, introduce the sound of breaking glass. And you write another 15 minutes. And then she says, introduce a child's cry, or somebody knocking at the door, just something. So she gives you three elements there in 45 minutes. You come up with something. I sold several of those to Daily Science Fiction too. So it was
That is amazing.
it's
I'm
really fun.
astonished by it because I know so many beginning writers who have decided they're going to write a novel and they spend their entire time in this little world. And the idea of jumping out and creating things in 90 minutes is like it's like you've thrown water on them. And I was also kind of, when I started your class, I was a little resistant to this, but I found that it's like doing sprint training. And now when I sit down with an idea, I can get that idea out on paper and get that story outlined in about 90 minutes. All thanks to Nina's technique.
Oh, that's very cool.
So it's like you have to step out of your own worlds, spend
Right.
Yeah.
time in other worlds in
Right.
order to have a much better handle on constructing your own world. Yeah, I definitely need it. It's like an architect who designs one kind of buildings is not as good as somebody who can design a lot of different kinds and bring ideas from the other designs in. It's
It sounds like it's very freeing, the idea that you have to outline the story and it has to begin with an inciting incident, and then
Oh
and
yeah.
that's like a corset, and it's really compressing.
Yeah.
And you sometimes you just want to throw everything out there and leap over the cliff and go flap, flap, flap and fly away. And that's what you're doing there. You just over the cliff and fly.
Well, it's really low stake.
Mm-hmm.
Nina, your screen has frozen for just a second, but my guess is we will get you back.
Yeah, I think she was saying that her internet sometimes flakes out.
Well, if that happens, we have to find Bob and get him to let her back in.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. Can you find Bob?
I can find Bob.
Okay,
Brenda,
good.
vamp for us for a second while I
All
go
right.
after Bob.
God damn it. This is why we have more than one of us here. You see, otherwise we'd have to watch Karen tinker with the keyboard. Oh, look, there you are. Well, I'm trying to think of the things that have been happening around here. I am getting ready to go to Worldcon in Glasgow, Scotland pretty soon. And at some point I have to pack everything together and do that. And because it is always such a production to get from the American West Coast to Europe, I'm going to do other things while I'm there, and that's that snowballing vacation thing that goes completely crazy.
We've got Nina back. It worked,
Oh,
Brenda.
yay!
Thank you.
Yay!
Yeah, and bon voyage, Brenda. Glasgow. It sounds interesting. I've never been there.
Well, I never have either, but we're going to find out. Darn it!
Yeah, so I was saying low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can just play. Yeah.
It
Good.
sounds wonderful.
It is a good thing for young writers to know.
Or
You know,
old writers.
there's so many people who believe that it's just like a recipe, and you have to have 2 cups of flour and a stick of butter, and they never think of doing anything different.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
true.
so
you know, there are workshops you go to where they say you have to have the 2 cups of flour, and then you have to do it like this, and the oven is at 350. There's never any sense that you should put some sequins into it, or maybe 6 ounces of sock yarn or something like that.
6 ounces.
By the way, I am checking because I'm not seeing the feed come through on Facebook. So I am.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that. I was checking around, and we don't seem to be getting any feed from anybody.
It says
whether
live.
it's
We're not getting any comments.
yeah, and I don't
Yes.
understand it.
I'm nagging Bob. I think he
good.
needs to push some kind of magic button.
Maybe we're
Yeah.
not recording, and it'll all go
Well,
away after we
It
stop
says
talking.
that we are live on the
Yes.
screen.
Does that mean it's recording?
Well, yes. Oh, yes, it's recording. So that's
Okay.
good. That
All
means
right.
that we are recording, and it can go up on Facebook later.
Okay.
It should
Right.
be on Facebook simultaneously.
And
But
I
including
went
me.
and looked, and it's not there that I can see, but
Aha.
yes,
that
and
means
we have
what that means, unfortunately, is hopefully there are thousands of fans over there saying, but where is Nina? And they're not, we can't see them.
And they
Okay.
can't answer us questions.
But-
Well, they're asking us, but we're not answering them. So what we have to do is use electronic telepathy and think about
Bob says
what they are asking, so we can answer the question. So what do
Bob
you
says
feel, Nina, that people would like to know?
I want to know what she's writing now.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I have an invite to an anthology that I need to work on the story, and I've been thinking about it for 3 months, but I don't have the right story yet. So I'm still trying to generate that.
Do you find a deadline helpful to sort of scourge that puppy on?
Deadline extremely helpful, and the deadline is here.
Oh, well, then maybe
I'm
after
gonna
this
ask
Zoom meeting,
Nina
you'll get going on it.
a deadline question. I've been doing a lot of fiction writing on deadline, 6-day
Yeah.
sprints.
Wow.
And I went back and looked at some of the stories I wrote, and they're not deep enough. They write too much like I'm describing what's happening. They write a little bit like a screenplay. What's your trick for getting the depth going there?
Well, that's what I think. You need to ask yourself, and you need to query the characters too. Like the whole thing about writing rite of passage story about something that happened in their past that might have left a wound or might have given them a certain strength. You can. I was just thinking about this with characters. Alex Jennings said he interviews them. He puts out some chairs and pretends that they're sitting there, and he interviews them. And I like journaling. Like when I first wake up, I might just free write about the characters and find out more about who they are. Or you could go look at pictures of people and see what are they wearing and why. Is that something my character would wear? I mean, I think Pinterest is probably a good place to go for just little clues about behavior and what people wear, what they do, what their interests might be. I have a character questionnaire that's like 2 pages of questions you might ask about who the characters are. You just want to go a little bit deeper and find out why they did that. How did they turn into the people that would make that choice?
So it's sort of motivations and character.
For me, I'm much more a character than a plot person.
I find that you have to think about it. You just have to sort of sit on it like a hen on an egg. It's not fast. You have to brood on it, if you know what I mean. I'm writing a novel, and I'm looking here. I'm at almost 147,000
Oh
words.
my gosh, Brenda, that's gonna be too long.
Only very recently, only like about 4,000 words ago, did I discover that the hero is Jewish. He did not tell me for 110,000 words, but yesterday he revealed that his mother is a Jew, his grandparents are Jewish. He's Jewish, right?
You're gonna have to go back.
So none of the above were practicing. It's just one of those. I'm a Jew rather than I practice Judaism. So
Yeah, but I think there's
you know,
cultural things that go along with that too.
well, it's the
Absolutely.
thing where you might not do any of the religious things, but
Yeah.
if you were in 1939 in Berlin, they would put you in a concentration camp. That kind of Jew, and it's just as real. You know, it's different, but it's certainly as real as being a religious person who does all of the proper things.
Yeah, it's different, but it's important.
It is very important, and nobody tells the author anything. Nobody. So
Nina, do you have characters that, even if it's not identical, but do you have a certain type of character that recurs in your writing?
Good question.
Like a wise witch or a wizard or a certain kind of child? Is there some thematic character that reappears for you?
I I think probably my characters have similarities to each other, and I think, like somebody like Matt Black is somebody who's appeared in a number of different stories and a couple of books. So I have characters that come back, that I like them. I'm not sure there's a type. I guess I haven't thought analytically about my own work like that.
What attracted you to Matt Black that you kept writing about him?
Well, she was like this wanderer who her whole life was sort of exploded. She was a homeless person who was wandering around, and then she became able to communicate with man-made objects. Like, if she's going through the trash, something down there might say, "Here's I am food," and rise to the top for her. Or she could get doors to open because they liked her. I mean, I just thought she had a stripped down lifestyle, and she would just wander around and wander into interesting situations. And so I just thought I really like her. I haven't written about her in a long time, but she ended up showing up in a variety of different projects. So.
Did she ever use that skill to, was she ever tempted to use the skill for maybe a not great reason? I mean, if she ever did having that skill, often people's talents and skills lead them into making mistakes or becoming
Yeah,
corrupted, because I could see that would be a skill that a thief could really use.
absolutely. I don't know. I have this. I once got to workshop with Ted Chiang, and I had a story about a guy who had a lot of power, and he was saying, this guy is going to be doing a lot of worse things than he does in this story. And I think based on real life, there is a lot to that. If you have a lot of power, you're going to end up using it. And I think one of the characteristics of my characters is they don't try to do a lot of evil things. At least the ones that I'm using as protagonists, I just like them to be nice. And as far as Matt's goes, I think that she would do stuff for survival, but she doesn't go off and hurt other people.
One of the big issues in stuff is how characters in fiction is how characters acquire power and knowledge, and then it becomes how they use the power and knowledge that they have. I personally I love reading about thief characters who have to make that kind of Robin Hood decision.
Yeah.
That always keeps a reader really engaged. What is this person going to do if they can do things other people can't?
Yeah. Yeah.
I spend a lot of time writing about power and the use of power. And one of the things that immediately makes me think about your character, Nina, is how did she get to be where it was, to be homeless? And you immediately think of that Captain America scenario where somebody, let us say, I don't know, the Russians or the CIA, somebody is trying to utilize her in ways that are really unpalatable. And the best way to hide from that might be to drop out, just to, fade out of society and not have a social security number or a cell phone or a name, or they can't find you on Facebook, you're gone. And it's still possible to do that in this world.
Yeah, one would think.
Well, maybe our children won't be able to do that anymore, but now you still can do it.
Yeah,
Particularly if you're willing to go into the Pacific Northwest and live among the fir trees.
with Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's essentially what you'd have to do. Cities have too much security cams, and then facial recognition will find you sort of everywhere. Yeah.
Or mistake you for someone else.
Well, there's always that. You've heard it's a very old idea that everybody has about 14 physical twins in the world. So somewhere in the world there's somebody who looks exactly like you, and you never meet them because they're someplace. They're in Ireland or Yugoslavia or someplace. You never meet them. But if by any chance you could meet them, you suddenly you'd have a twin, someone who looks exactly like you. And that was the excuse they used in, I don't know, in comic books, where you find someone who looks exactly like Lois Lane, that kind of thing.
Well, that isn't an aspect of this that I've explored. I think that Matt had a tragic early life,
Mm-hmm.
and she ran away from home, and a variety of other things happened. So that's not an element of her story. And I haven't done a whole lot of things about people interacting with evil government agencies. That's not
That's
where
sort of
I
my
am.
bag.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, all of my characters get into trouble with the U.S. government.
Yeah. And also, I started writing about her in the 90s before a lot of this stuff was going on. So, I mean, it's probably going on, but who knows? But facial recognition, my point about that is that it gets things wrong a lot at this point.
Oh, yeah. And how it's so easy to foil them,
I don't know about that. See, I'm not thinking in that way, but I think that, not recognizing Black people as well as white people.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it's badly trained.
But that's an ability. That's a power, not a problem, if you know what I mean. Maybe you would get a whole crew of Black people to do stuff because the AI doesn't recognize you so well.
Okay. I don't plot like that so far. I don't know. I have some flash pieces that might.
You can see how our minds work. Nina works in a much kinder and nicer way. I am always looking for the trouble that you can cause.
Yeah, and that when you're writing fiction, that seems to work in the Western storytelling mode. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, Nina's characters get into a lot of trouble, but it's usually less technologically caused. But yes.
Yeah, now that I think about it, sometimes there's bad actors for sure.
Yeah, I think that when I think about it, my characters tend to get into trouble because they've gotten in over their heads in some way,
I think that happens a lot. Yeah, I think that happens to my guys too. But
yeah, that's actually a very good thing to do. Find deep hole, push character in, and then there you go. No.
Nina, do you ever do roll-ups where people create two characters?
Yes.
And then the gig is to have them interact?
Yeah, 3 characters is even better. Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to do one when I do your class again. I would love to do one of those exercises.
All right. I've worked up some. Actually, I just went to MISCON last month. No, it wasn't last month anymore. It was the end of May. The end of May. And I did a couple of workshops there where it's create 3 characters and then put them in, get some plot elements. And yeah, where they're going to be interacting for sure. And we can do that. And actually, I did that with Marianne Zenos, and she wrote a story that won the first place in Writers of the Future based on a roll-up.
Whoa, very cool.
So that was awesome. But a lot of that, her amazing talent and the history that she draws on is so fascinating. She's just a wonderful writer. So
you just brought up Writers of the Future. Tell us a little about it, but also really what you are doing with it, in what your role is with them.
Well, Algis Budrus and L. Ron Hubbard came up with this writing contest like in 1983 or 84, where, they're just looking to support young writers. And so AJ sent out guidelines to people he knew. And of course, he'd been my clarion instructor a couple of years earlier. And so Dean and I both got the guidelines and we wrote stories and sent them into the contest. And I got a third place, and Dean was an honorable mention who was in the first volume. And so we were at the contest when it started. And then they asked me to be a judge about 20 years later. So I've been a judge at the contest, which they have somebody who looks at all the entries, and that's the gateway judge. It was David Farland for a while. It was Katie Wentworth while she was still alive. And right now, I think it might be Jody Lynn Nye. And then they select the 8 finalists for each quarter, and then a whole rotating cast of judges, and I'm one of, get to look at the 8 finalists and rank them. And that's how they pick first, second, and third place. So this contest, it has detractors who are worried about the Scientology connection and all that stuff. But it's really, Elron set it up using money only from his published works, not from the religion. It was Battlefield Earth. He wrote that then. And then he'd use that money to pay for the prizes. That are $1,000, $750, and $500. And then they fly you someplace and give you a week-long writer's workshop where all the judges come and talk to you. Kevin Anderson, Tim Powers, Anne McCaffrey used to come when she was still alive. Roger Zelazny, I don't know. Ray Bradbury was at the very first ceremony, and Harlan Ellison was there. And it was so crazy. It was at Chasen's in Beverly Hills before they had the whole thing, before they had set up the workshops and everything. And it was insane. It was just wonderful, crazy. There we were at this fancy restaurant talking to all these people we'd been idolizing all these years. Harlan told me a joke. And that was so exciting. But at this point, you get down there for a week and you write a story every night. Oh, there's Bob.
Bob looks kind of grim.
Uh-oh. Are we at our time?
No.
Maybe. We're not live casting. That's it.
Okay. You may have noticed that last week.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. For the last 3 weeks, Restream has cut us off in the middle of our show. And this week, I look up there and it says that we're doing everything from this end, but then I go out and every channel says it's waiting for feed.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
so there's a fuck up.
And I'm talking even YouTube.
Uh-oh.
So Restream is apparently not working, and I hate to interrupt the conversation because you guys are having a great conversation. I can see you're enjoying, but I wanted to make sure you knew we're not broadcasting. And
but are we recording?
We're not recording either.
Uh-oh, then we are fucked. Well, then what we have to do is do it all again sometime in the autumn.
Yes, but
because obviously, if it's not recording and we don't have it streaming, then there's zipperoonie.
We're having a nice conversation with
one. And it's always good to talk to Nina.
So, Nina, if we do it again in the fall, I may really be asking for it, but I would love to get Dean on with you.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yes.
He's much more prescriptive than I am, though.
But that's
okay. I know. I had